Welcome to Blue Steel Heroes. We're going to be meeting today with Ryan Bombard. We're going to be talking about two different subjects, and we'll do them as two different videos. The first was his experience as a combat crewman on a small boat in Europe, in Africa, in the Middle East. And the second, we'll be talking about his current work as a firefighter and firefighter chief in Costa Rica. So welcome to our channel, and thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Can you, that's an unusual switch of careers. We'll get to that when we talk about the second one. But let's concentrate for now on the small boat combat crewman role. I've never interviewed anybody in that area yet, so I'm very glad and very appreciative of you being on the show. So tell us about the general missions. What kind of missions did you do? And then I'll ask you to get into as much detail as you can about some very specific missions.
Okay, so I got into an inshore boat unit stationed out of San Diego, and it was in the late 90s and early 2000s. So there really wasn't any specific place for us to do what we did. So they trained us in intelligence gathering, they trained us in ASW, anti-submarine warfare stuff. They trained us in port defense, you know, how to secure a port. And we did a lot of high-value operation movements where we'd be the security for movements of ships and such inside, in and out of ports. And we did direct action. So we were able to do pretty much anything. And they moved us around the world, basically, from place to place in a C-17. And we would, depending on what the needs of the Navy were, they would have us handle, they would put us to work.
Were you at 32nd Street or Coronado, or where?
We were actually stationed out of Miramar. But
out of Miramar?
We deployed out of Coronado.
Okay. Oh, okay. Understood. That makes sense. Who were you operationally under?
We were operationally under Mobile Undersea Warfare Group 1.
Yes.
MIUW 1 out of San Diego, which was Coronado. And then operationally, we generally operated under JSOC.
Understood. That makes complete sense. So tell about some of what kind of missions did before we get into specific ones.
We did a lot of security operations for different ports. You know, especially after the USS Cole was bombed. You know, they put us into play, making sure there was a barrier. There was always a bubble with anything that had to do with the U.S. Navy in the water. So we would train with several different units. We worked a lot with the proper special warfare community. We worked with a lot of the EOD guys. We worked with a lot of different... So we worked with a lot of different groups. We would get called to do different things from here to there, doing surveillance. Like when we were in Africa, we were there to basically do some security stuff on the rivers. Don't think I can get too far into that one. But you know, we were there for about a month. You know, it was one of the cooler trips I got to do. You know, and spent a lot of time in Kuwait and Iraq. We were there 6 months before the war was declared, so our job was to make sure all of the infrastructure for the U.S. Navy and Army and Marine Corps was able to safely come ashore in Kuwait. And then once that happened, we moved up into the border and started going in through the ports through Nosara and etc.
And this was in preparation for the...
Well, once it was in preparation, and we supported a lot of different agencies that were going in and out before the war was declared. We supported their insert and extract. And then once the war was declared, then we moved forward, and we were up in we got moved up forward.
Were you primarily providing transport, or were you primarily being direct action yourself?
It depended on the operation. So most of the time we did not do much of the transport side. That was more of the SWIC guys were doing that, because that's what their boats are designed for. Our boats are really crash and smash. We had heavy armament, and we would go in and more of a protection.
Understood. Protection for American military units?
All of the above.
Okay, understood. That's quite a collection of places that you served in. What can you tell us? You said that you were loath to talk too much about what was going on in Africa. What can you tell us about the prep for the war in Kuwait and Iraq? You
know, it came pretty quick for us, because all of a sudden 9/11 happened, and then all of a sudden everybody was spinning around like bees, and people were going to Afghanistan, and people were going to gear up to go to Iraq. You had two different war fronts at the same time. And so we were in preparation for that, and finally the green light came for us, and that was within maybe 3 weeks we got the notice from we're going to we're gone, and it happened really fast,
And you were doing, at that point, it was a self-contained unit. You weren't transporting, or were you at that point transporting DevGru or whatever?
Well, no, we didn't work on those types of things too much. I mean, it was really, we worked quite a bit with EOD. DevGru, those guys were off on their own stuff, doing the cool guy shit in other areas, That's what they were doing. We ran into a couple different team guys here and there, but the majority we worked a lot with EOD. We're on the rivers and the ports, because that was more of what was going on for us.
When I was in the Navy, I had a buddy that was EOD and kept trying to get me to go in, and I said, I'm not that crazy.
EOD is a pretty cool unit.
It is.
But it's not about being crazy, it's about being precise. Those guys are very, very smart, very, very 100%. Like there's no mistake. You cut the wrong wire, you're done. But yeah, every one of those guys I work with were very, very professional.
Yes, and very calm.
Yeah, and we shared our operations camp when we were in Kuwait actually shared it with EOD.
That would be quite interesting. What role did EOD have to play in the lead up to the war?
I don't know. That's them. They were doing a lot of the mine clearances and stuff like that in the ports where we were working with them on that. We would, they were going on operations all the time, up ahead with generally with SEALs and other Tier 1 units. But no, I mean, for us, the majority was in the water, because we'd go out, check out the oil derricks, we'd go check, making sure the ports are safe, and then we would work in conjunction with them for any kind of possible explosives, clearance of the underwater side of everything that we'd have to protect.
Now you were, when you were in, you said, were you in Afghanistan?
No, I never.
I was going to say, I don't remember there being any rivers in Afghanistan.
No, I never got there.
When you were doing direct action, insofar as you can tell us about what would direct action consist of?
A lot of it had to do with mostly incoming boats, fast boats, stuff like that were a threat to the area we were protecting. There were some times to where it would be protecting rivers, so little guys coming out of nowhere on the sides, but the majority were fast boats.
Got it. Understood. And
boat on boat, basically.
Right. Understood. And of course, the targets at that point were the oil wells and also the American boats. What can you tell us about some particular missions, even if you have to be a little cagey about where they were?
We were protecting a spot in northern Kuwait, and everybody's just hanging out. This is before the war was declared, so everything's kind of cool. And we'd get the missile alerts all the time, and then we actually had a Scud missile hit within probably 1,000 yards of us, and literally blew us off the feet. And then one of the scarier moments at the time is we were all thinking chemical warfare.
Of course.
In the beginning of it all, they were just chemical. So donning our chemical warfare, suits, or CBR suits, and wow, it was the fastest thing I ever did, I think. But
get into the suit.
Yeah, get in that suit, and then we'd have tape and extra stuff to make sure it was good, because back then it was the beginning. We didn't really know what we were getting into,
Given the amount of poison gas that Saddam had used.
Well, and then it's still really new, to the whole military. You're talking in the early 2000s when, they just finished with the other Gulf War, or didn't really finish it, but they kind of moved on from it. And, the whole chemical warfare thing was still really fresh in the military eyes. So, we'd go through these drills. I mean, our bunkers were shipping containers they buried. It wasn't much, and then they put us in an army base. So obviously we stick out like a sore thumb. Yeah. And, but yeah, how did
working with the Army or being present with the Army work out?
It's different. They look.
I was Navy, so you're not going to defend me.
They look at us like, look at these clowns, running around with their weapons loaded, and because that's what we did. We were always on. We always had ammo. We didn't have to turn it in at night. In our tents, we had our weapons with us with ammo, and we never turned anything in. We would always, have a round in the chamber when we would go to clear our weapons at the gates. And they looked at us really weird for stuff like that. But other than that, it was pretty okay. I mean,
So you have bases that are Army, but EOD is also there, and you're also there.
So what we had is we had two spots. We had an operational camp where we had our boats, it was on the water, and then we had like tents where we'd sleep. So we'd have our duty crews that would be in the operational camp, and then we would be, you know, shifting watches to who was in the operational camp. The operational camp is actually where the EOD guys stayed.
Understood. As you'd expect, since
Yeah.
that's what they're aiming for. What kind of numbers are we talking about? Numbers of people that were in your units.
My unit had maybe 32, 33 people. It was a pretty small group. You know, they teamed us up with a group from Texas to bulk up the numbers, and another group about 32 or so. And but that's about our whole crew of what we would travel with. You know, we could fit everybody on a C-17 with our two boats and our trucks and stuff, and pretty much go anywhere we needed to.
Did you sustain any casualties?
No, we did good. I'm happy to say that we did not lose anybody. Some damage on some vehicles, but that would be about it.
So let's shift from that part of the Middle East. You said you were in Israel at one point. What were you doing for the support of Israel?
My time when I was around Israel was while I was a rescue swimmer. So it was before I got into the boat cruise. I was a Navy rescue swimmer. So we were out there. Gosh, that was in the 1996. Like that was a long time ago. And but I was actually just there for R&R, to tell you the truth. And then because we were dealing with the conflict up in Bosnia or Croatia, so we were stationed up there in the Adriatic for that, dealing with the guys that were bringing the guns and stuff across the Adriatic from Italy into to
I think gun runners would work.
Yeah, gun runners. We were dealing with those types of people, and you know, and then there was a few missions for the ships that we were on and stuff like that, and then, but yeah, it was that was when we were there, and then, I mean, gosh, that was an amazing time. My 20s were awesome. You know, I was in my 20s.
No, I can imagine. I can imagine. What does a rescue swimmer do in that circumstance?
Well, our rescue swimmer there's a couple different versions. You know, there's aviation rescue swimmer, there's surface rescue swimmer, and I was more of the surface rescue swimmer. So our job was to make sure that any of the aircraft flying, we were there ready in case there was a crash or an accident for our aircraft coming and going.
Understood. Yeah, I definitely understand that. We had those when we did helicopter operations.
Exactly. So with flight quarters, you go, and you're ready and ready to go whenever something happens.
All right.
That's where I got most of my medical training back in the day too. I was able to get EMT intermediate, and as you know, in the military, as an EMT, you basically are doing doctor stuff.
Sure.
So I mean, you know, I got a ton of extra training. So when I was able to get out, I was able to get my paramedic pretty easy.
Oh, very good. Very good. My daughter is a Navy medical doctor for emergencies.
Oh, amazing.
So I'm somewhat familiar with the territory. Tell me some more about various missions that you were on, not as a rescue swimmer, but as a
boat unit.
Yeah, boat unit. We
did a lot of stuff. The majority of my combat stuff was going to be, I'll say, Kuwait and Iraq. Like, I remember pulling into, this was land, we were doing a convoy, moving all of our equipment forward into Qasr. So this was maybe a week after the war had started. And Qasr was a nasty fight. Like, it was an ugly spot that took a lot, you probably know, but it took a lot of heat there. And we moved in there, and when we cut through the DMZ, you know, you got to realize, we just started using the 240s. You know, so we got rid of the M60s and moved to the 240s. So we've got these things where we had our M4s, M16s. We took the front cover guards off to put the M203s on it, and we'd save the covers and we'd put them on the barrels of the 240s because they were crew mount, they were crew serve weapons, so that we could carry them and use them in hand. So it was just modifying stuff to make it work. You know, and we cut through, and it was like the first time these people that had like seen a lot of Americans coming through the DMZ, and we went through and then we went into our camp and set everything up, but, you know, passing through the big swords and all that. That was one of the cooler missions. I mean, we didn't have any contact during that time frame, but that was one of the cooler moments that I was there.
I can imagine. What was your relationship with, or your contact with JSOC, if you were technically under them?
For me, personally, not much. That was the higher ups. They dealt with that stuff, and they would just be like, okay, you do this, you go here, and you do that. You know, I mean, that was really my position at that point, because I was a patrol leader of a 3-boat element, but basically they told us where and what to do, and we did it.
Understood. There is a lot of feeling, I don't know if this is accurate or even something we should be discussing, but there's a lot of feeling that the second Gulf War was cleanup action for the first one being abandoned.
For me, I try not to get into that side of it, because I think really most importantly for me is I was there for the guy to my right, to my left, you know,
Exactly.
and to get into the politics of it kind of takes that away from it.
Let's talk for a minute about the guy to your left and the guy to your right. One of the things that we discuss quite a lot on this channel are the effects that missions have, not necessarily immediately, but on the longer term with people who are participating in them. And I have heard from everyone who has ever been in combat, I'd say it's universal, that you're not fighting, when you're in combat, you're not fighting for cause, you're fighting for the guy on your left and the guy on your right.
100%. That's the only way you can think about it.
It's the only way you can survive.
Well, it's it, you know, and it is survival at that point too, because the moment you pull your head out of what you're doing and you focus on something that's fictitious like that, you're done.
It takes all you can to survive, to be concentrating on what you're going through right now, and sometimes that's not enough.
100%. Like if you can't just keep yourself motivated on what you're doing, and anybody who, I mean, I can't speak for anybody else, of course, but like for me and anybody that I've worked directly with, I mean, you can come back to the States and be like, oh, I feel this way, I feel that way, or whatever, but like when you're there, like it is what it is, and if you can't take it for what it is, you shouldn't be there.
Exactly, because as you said, you're not setting the policy, you're not setting even the larger term goals, you've got a mission, and you're going to carry out that mission, and you're going to carry it out with the people who are on either side.
That's right.
That kind of brotherhood, close relationship with the people that you're working with, is very difficult to give up when you come out of the service. I've had SEALs say that, I've heard DOD say that, I've had even SWAT and others like that say it. What effects have you seen, if any, on people who served with you once they left the service?
You know, a lot of them find work in other places that are still, you know, high action. You know, like for me, I moved from, I went to work, when I got out, I became a rigger for the music industry. So I was up in the tops of stadiums rigging all the electrical and the sound and all the different stuff. Great money, and it was a lot of fun, and it kind of kept that adrenaline going a little bit. And then I moved here, and I found myself in an office going kind of crazy, you know, and then people would just come to me because they hear I had experience and this and that to help. And that's what leads into the fire department.
We'll get into that shortly. What does it feel like to be doing something that, in the case you were doing, is completely behind the scenes? This is not something that makes the morning newspapers.
I don't care. I don't think about it like that. I'm super proud of what I was able to do, and you know, and honestly, I miss it, to tell you the truth. Like, I mean, I miss doing all that stuff, and if I could do it again, I'd do it again.
I've heard that even from people who are in direct combat with, you know, suicide bombers all around them, say that. Heard the opposite too. Any other missions that you should be telling us about?
Not really.
So let's put aside for the moment though I'm sure I may have a question or two continuing on, let's put aside the small boat work. You get out. Was that just end of tour or the end of war?
Well, it was end of war, and then we came back and we did a lot of workup stuff in San Diego, and they're looking at sending us out again, and I just looked at everybody and I was like, you know, I think I'm good. I did 13 years of service, and they're like, do 3 more, you get your early pension, and I was just like, you know, I think I'm good. You know, it was at a point where I was just kind of frustrated with everything I was dealing with, and I'd hit a wall on rank where I wasn't going to make any more rank right away, and I was just like, I was just done. And, you know, sometimes I regret that decision, thinking if I would have stayed 3 more years, I might have stayed 8 more years, you know?
Yeah.
You know, or more. But I stand by my decision because it's what led me to Costa Rica.
So it is a bit of a jump from now you're a civilian in the United States to suddenly you're in Costa Rica.
Yeah.
So walk us through that decision.
Holy cow. So, basically, you know, my parents moved here. You did an interview with my brother yesterday, I believe.
Yep.
So my parents moved here in Costa Rica in 1998, and they started a hotel. My family used to own and operate all the business in two harbors on Catalina Island.
Mm-hmm.
So when they sold the lease there, they basically were like, "Hey, let's go to someplace like 40 years in the past that would be like Catalina was." And we came here as a family. We traveled the country and found Nosara, and that was where they started a hotel and called the Harbor Reef. And I was still active in the military until 2006, so I didn't make it down here for quite some time permanently, but I visited quite a bit. And then once I got out of the service in 2006, I was on terminal leave until like 2007, because I had built up so much. Mm-hmm. And I looked at my girlfriend at the time and said, "Fuck it, let's sell everything and move." That was the exact term. That's exactly how it went down. And she looked at me, she's like, "Are you crazy?" I'm like, "A little bit, but yeah, let's go." And so we sold everything we had and we moved to Costa Rica, and I was helping my family with the hotel for the first year we were here, and I just was going stir crazy. And I started doing fishing charters, because I'm a big spear fisherman, so I love doing that. And started doing that to where at least I was getting out doing something. And then that led to where we started the fire department. And what that basically was is the people in the town, there was no resource for much anything here. You got hurt, you're pretty much on your own. Your house started on fire, you're pretty much on your own. The nearest fire station was an hour and a half away. So we just like, okay, let's figure this out, and I started helping with this, started helping with that, a fire here, a fire there. And it went from maybe 3 or 4 calls a year to now, today, I have 4 to 10 calls a day. So it's really evolved quite a bit in the last 16 years I've been doing it.
Sounds like what you were talking about earlier is it's considerably more than fire.
Oh no, we do everything. Like we literally do everything. Like I grew up on Catalina Island, so obviously I looked at LA County Fire as my base idea of what we should expect here, or what we needed here, because they do everything. They're a one-stop shop. So I have lifeguards, I have emergency first response, I have helicopter operations, I have vertical rescue, mountain rescue teams, I have, obviously fire, and then I have a forest firefighter brigade, and we do a lot, but the only difference that we do that is not common to fire departments is we do a lot of animal calls. So we capture a lot of snakes and crocodiles. I
can understand that's not something that usually happens on Catalina.
Well, anywhere, any fire department really.
Right.
I mean, you go to the States and you have animal control for stuff like that, or parks and wildlife, or people like that, to where we have to do all of it. And we do have a partnership with the Refuge for Wildlife here, International Refuge for IAR, so International Animal Refuge. So we work with their vets and everything like that. So we'll be pulling monkeys off power lines, catching wild cats. We do pretty much everything.
So it's interesting. I've never heard of a fire department, emergency department, growing organically from the ground up. That makes it quite. So it explains your creativity, or at least it makes use of your creativity. Tell us about some of the stranger things. I'm sure the confidentiality here is a little bit less than it is with the small boats.
I can be pretty open on everything that I do here because there's not any kind of clause that I have to deal with. But, we can go from catching snake in somebody's backyard in the morning to having a car that drove off a 300-meter cliff and people stuck inside of it down at the bottom of the hill. We have to rappel down, we have to stabilize them, do the extraction from the vehicle, and then manage to get them back to the road. So the only thing we do not have is we do not have an ambulance. So we work with the local departments and then the private ambulances as well. So like the Red Cross of Costa Rica, they would be our main resource that we would call for an ambulance, because they're the more public and organic resource that would be for the general public here. So, but they're generally basic support. So we have to manage our patients as basic as possible so we can transport them off to them and not have any kind of overlaps on ability. But anyways, it goes from 0 to 1,000 within a second. Today, for example, I had a medical emergency where elderly person fell and needed stitches. So we showed up, controlled the bleeding, and they got them transported off to the local clinic, and he got taken care of. In the afternoon, I had a forcible entry where somebody was stuck inside of a house, and we had to cut the door open to go get them out. So you never know what you're going to get. I mean,
there's got to be some form of mission like that's a preponderance of the ones you do. What would be the most common?
The most common is probably auto accidents, car accidents.
Given these roads, I can understand that.
I had a guy that was really critical yesterday that we had to actually do advanced care with and put in a private ambulance to get to Nicoya, and because he was very, very damaged. So I would say the medical and accidents are the most common thing that we deal with at this point. There's certain times to where there's no outside care, so we're the only response that can come. Saying you have high blood pressure in the middle of the night and you need help. A lot of times we'll go and we'll evaluate you and either get you where you need to go or calm you down enough to where you can wait in the morning to go to the doctor.
You have obviously emergency medical personnel working closely with you.
Right now I have a pretty solid team. I have 35 firefighters and 15 lifeguards.
So what do the lifeguards do in particular? I mean, they're not sitting at the beach in the they're sitting in the beach at the raised chairs?
We have towers on the beach.
Mm-hmm.
So we have, the thing that's different where we live is we live in a national refuge. So it's not municipal, and it's like not a municipality. It's different. So the permissions are different. So we work with SINAC, which is the Wildlife Protection Agency of Costa Rica, and we provide a service within the area of the refuge. So we have built towers in Guiones and Pilata to where we have lifeguards on the beach every day. We have a jet ski to do ocean rescue. We have a boat. We have 2 boats now. So we're moving. We have a very solid team there, and statistically wise, it's been amazing. I'll find some wood to knock on, but in the last 5 years, we've had full-time lifeguards on the beach. We've had 3 fatalities. One was a drowning, and one was a shooting, and one was a heart attack. So
yeah,
we've with the thousands of people that visit our beach every day, pretty much, we've made a difference. And before that, we would lose 5 to 10 people a year, fatalities on the beach for drowning specifically. So it's made a huge impact on the area where we live.
That's impressive for a place with so much surfing because of the getting hit in the head with the boards and other things like that.
Yeah.
Do you ever regret leaving the States?
There was a moment, and it was all about the military. Like I missed the military. I missed the life. I missed everything that comes with that. And that was, as far as leaving the States, that's it. Like, I'm here and I'm not going anywhere. My kids were born here, and I'm happy to be here. But for that, I am a community volunteer, liaison volunteer for the U.S. Embassy in Costa Rica. So I do still help American citizens get where they need to go and get what they need within the country here as a go-to person if they have any problems and need help to the embassy.
So this is of course separate from the firefighting.
It's separate, but they all kind of lead together because my ability to work with everybody for the fire department also gives me first access to, if there's a American citizen that was killed in Costa Rica in my area, I'm already going to have all the information to give to the OEHOTA. I'm going to have all the information to give to the U.S. Embassy so they can start the process for the family and moving of the body and stuff like that with the most ease.
Are your primary interactions with expats or with Ticos?
There's a lot of Tico, but when you say expats, it is mostly expats, but not what you'd think. It's not American. It's primary Nicaraguan.
Nicaraguan? That's unusual. Why?
Because like you look at California, you have all the Mexicans coming in to work for low salary. It's the same thing with the Nicaraguans coming into Costa Rica. They come here and they work at a lower salary, so construction companies and whatnot can put a lower price tag on it, and then they send all their money back to Nicaragua to take care of their families. It's basically the same exact thing that we have in California, but in a different place. But that leads to a lot of people that buy motorcycles for $300 that shouldn't be on the road, and it leads to a lot of emergencies on the road, and that's where we have a lot of interaction.
Also, your roads are creative, to put it mildly, in some
Sure.
places. Better than it used to be when I first came here, but...
Oh yeah.
Oh gosh. We first came here, it was impossible, to get
There was
around.
no
Not
going-
even here, even right here.
There was no going anywhere fast.
There was
back
no
then.
going anywhere fast, and you do it in the rainy season, you were swimming.
I have a horse.
Yeah, okay, understood that. Does the horse get used in your work?
I do. I have 2 horses, and we do search and rescue. I do with the horses. I also will do horseback medical support for some of the national events in Costa Rica, where they have a lot of cabalgatas and stuff, where they have all the groups of people on horseback doing like tours and stuff like that. So we'll do a mounted support with that as well.
And there's the annual rodeos, right?
Stuff like that, yeah.
Yeah, so that's definitely the case. And from what I understood from some discussions today, bulls goring matadors.
It's not really matadors. It's mostly random people jumping in the ring and running around with the bulls.
They've been listening to the Spaniards in Pamplona too much, huh?
Well, what happens is the way the bullfights go here is it's not like what you'd see with the guy with the red flag and the cool hat and stuff like that. You have bull riders that go out there and ride the bull. They're pretty professional, but you also have anybody who wants to get in the bull ring and be in the ring. So you have a lot of people very intoxicated, drinking, that have liquid courage, and they get in the ring and they find out the bull's faster than they are.
And pointier.
There's been some pretty good ones.
Yeah, we saw the statue to the bull up north.
Malacranza.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You find it obviously fulfilling what you're doing.
I love my job. I'll be honest. I like the job as a firefighter more than the job as chief. Obviously, the politics of it get pretty tiring.
In other words, you like being in the field and dealing with the actual people, which is why you joined the idea of helping people in the first place.
I'm more of the point of the spear type guy.
Tell us a little bit more of the point of the spear. Tell us about the interactions that you have with the locals in a day-to-day emergency or semi-emergency situation.
There's a certain level of racism that you have to deal with, because I'm a gringo. I'm about as gringo as it gets, to tell you the truth. I have tattoos. I'm white. And I don't really. I fit every stereotype pretty much of a gringo. And what that does is some of the older class people aren't used to seeing somebody like me coming to save them. So in the first years of us doing this, there was a lot of static on that. And our town has, with the response that we provided to our town over the last 16 years, has changed the mindset of the majority of everybody in our area. To whereas I still deal with it on a political level every now and then. And, and when we started, it was all pretty much gringos because we're the only ones that had time to do this. And now my team is 99% Tico, local. So that was the movement forward to trying to make it right here. And as I said earlier, it's weird having a Costa Rican flag on my shoulder when for so many years I had the American flag on my shoulder. But, it's who I am now.
Are you still an American citizen?
Yes. I'll never give that up.
No. Nor is anybody else I've talked to who's living down here that came from the United States. But they love it as I see why. What would you say to an American who wanted to get into the population like you have in order to provide help and aid? Is your organization the best way to do that? Are there other places where they can go, where they can interact directly with the people to help them?
I'll say, especially in the beach communities, to help out with like the lifeguard projects and stuff like that, that's a pretty good way to come in. And when you come from, say, an emergency type scenario or military, whatnot, and you have the special, I'll say, qualifications that they don't really have a lot of in Costa Rica, to go and help out with the different types of agencies, there's usually some pretty good leeway on allowing people to come in. But if you don't speak Spanish, you're not going to make it very far.
No. Well, of course not. You should learn the language of the country you're living in.
I'll tell you, one of the hardest things for me was when I took it's Apple, which is like basic, EMT basic to the translate to the States. And I took that course in Spanish when I moved down here to start transferring my titles over. And I'll tell you, that was the hardest thing I've ever done.
I can imagine.
Because my Spanish was, I could speak a little bit, but like having to read and comprehend and write paragraphs in Spanish, and that the questions are over, like any kind of medical test, the questions are designed to throw you off and trick you in wording. So I'm dealing with that in another language, and that was one of the hardest things I ever did. I passed it, but man, that was one of the more difficult things I had to do to come into where I'm at now here.
I can understand that.
I'd like to say one more thing.
Oh, yeah.
Our fire department is 100% donation based. We do not get any support from the government. We survive on donations and donations alone.
And if somebody wanted to contribute, who would they contact?
You can go to Amigos de Costa Rica.
Amigos de Costa Rica?
Yes, Friends of Costa Rica, Amigos de Costa Rica, and look up Bomberos de Nosara. And we have a 501(c) donation for the United States and Canada, and we have tax exemption in Costa Rica.
Excellent. Do it, folks.
Thank you, please. We could use your help.
And thank you all for tuning in today. See you next time.